Will Ashton, what is our featured review this week, and what format were you able to see it in?
Yeah, our main review for this week is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This is the new animated Sony film, which is, in some people's view, yet another Spider-Man film, but I don't think that's how we're going to feel about it. It is from 3 directors, I believe. Bob Persichetti. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I think it is, so we apologize, but yeah.
Yeah. He did, Peter Ramsey, the second director, did Rise of the Guardians.
Rise of the Guardians, yes. The 2012 animated film that probably should have won Best Animated Film that year at the Oscars, in my opinion.
And then I think Rodney Rothman was also director on this film, if I'm not mistaken.
He was, yes.
Yeah.
And he's been known not just as director and a producer, he's also been a screenwriter in the past, and he's produced a few films.
And I guess what seems weird about this is that most people look at it as a Phil Lord and Chris Miller film, which is understandable since they produced it and Phil Lord is involved with the screenplay, but it's not them directing. So if there's any confusion about that, let that confusion go out the door.
Right. To be specific, Phil Lord, like you said, co-wrote the film with Rodney Rothman, who, we did mention this, he's also an author, and Phil Lord has a story credit on this. So apparently, yes, he did come up with the story, and since Christopher Miller, his partner, is a producer on it, you can kind of imagine that their hands are all over this from the get-go.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a Phil Lord and Chris Miller production. So
no offense to Peter Ramsey and Bob Persichetti, they should get due credit for directing this film, but yes.
I saw it in a regular film presentation, not Dolby or anything. Forgot to mention that earlier.
Interesting. Yes. I saw it in a regular film presentation as well, but I know Maveryke Hines, you saw it in the Dolby, correct?
I did see it in Dolby.
Okay.
I refused to see it in 3D because the 3D glasses give me a headache.
I think this is one of those movies, though, that kind of forces you to watch it in 3D, whether you wanted to or not, based on some of the
I found the loophole and I exercised that right.
Let's go through the cast real quick, and then we're going to review this film. So the cast includes Shameik Moore, you might remember from Dope a couple of years ago. He was also in that Netflix show that was a bit short-lived, The Get Down.
Oh, love that show.
Baz Luhrmann's, yeah. So he voices Miles Morales, the main character. You also have a couple of characters who voice all of the Spider people in this film. There's Jake Johnson, there's Haley Steinfeld, who plays Spider-Gwen, or Spider-Woman, as she's called in the film. Mahershala Ali, Brian Tyree Henry, Lily Tomlin, Luna Lauren Velez, John Mulaney, Kimiko Glenn, Nicolas Cage, and Liev Schreiber. So quite a cast, and to get into the plot and the synopsis, Matt Serafini, we want to hear your thoughts on the film, but how would you describe this film without getting into any spoilers for the uninitiated? What is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse about, and what did you think?
I guess Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is about Miles Morales, who's a young Afro-Latino kid living in Brooklyn, and it's about how he comes to be the new Spider-Man. I guess that's like the really nutshell version of it, right? Is that
not
no
giving
interdimensions.
anything away. I love it.
Yeah.
And I guess to add a little more detail, it involves some Spider-Men and women from other universes coming into the fray to help him learn what it takes, among other things. Well, I really, really, really liked this movie. I'm a really, really big fan of Spider-Man, as Will said at the top of the show. And I've been reading every Spider-Man comic ever for the past three and a half years. It's a major part of my life. I've seen all 6 other movies many times. I'm also a huge fan of animation. So this movie was really kind of made for me in a way. But that being said, I would say it also makes me harder to please. Like, John, I feel like you probably empathize with this, where you're a really big fan of Pixar, so you're probably going to like anything they do. But you're also a little harder to please than most people in terms of for it being absolutely perfect.
I'm just hard to please with everything, Matt.
That's fair. But in any case, this movie passed the tests, and it really is something really special. It is literally like jumping into a comic book and seeing everything coming to life. The art style is just immaculate. I saw somebody say when they walked out of the theater, they said, this is probably what it was like to walk out of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That might be a bit of a exaggeration, but I mean, I think the idea is there. Yeah, I really, really like this movie. It does so well with everything about Spider-Man. It's everything I love about the character boiled down in a nice format. Yeah, I don't know. How about you guys?
We just want you to do the entire review, though. So
the entire review, just me.
we didn't mention this, but this is actually a Sony production. This comes from Sony Pictures, and Sony ImageWorks did the animation, which means this is part of Columbia. And Marvel Entertainment is one of the production companies that helped this, along with Lord Miller Productions. So it is kind of interesting because Sony has had not the greatest track record with Spider-Man films in the last decade. I think just a couple of months ago, they put out my least favorite film of 2018, which is Venom. And so it is interesting. This is a bit of a surprise in a lot of different ways, and that's certainly one of them for me. Maveryke Hines, you saw this one pretty fresh.
Saw it last night.
Just saw it last night, and you saw this one with your wife. What did you both think of Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, well, I'll start with what she told me, which is, I love this movie. And that's about as analytical as that conversation got with her.
I love the detail that she gets into.
Yeah, I mean, she's a wizard, man. But no, for real, we both really had a great time with that. I will say that we benefited like so greatly from seeing it in Dolby. That was such a cool experience. The sound was unreal. Like, I mean, that was probably the best Dolby viewing experience I've had yet. Granted, I've only had like 5 or 6. You know, it's not a huge.
Better than Night School.
I didn't see Night School, so.
I did in Dolby. I just had to remind.
You saw Night School in Dolby?
Why not?
That's great.
What?
A-list, baby.
That's right. You've got the A-list. You don't scrim.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was distractingly weird. So she had a really good time. She liked it. We talked about it all the car ride home. I really like this. I'm not near the Spider-Man fan as our fourth chair friend here, Matt, today, but I do like Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man movies. I haven't seen a lot of the let's see, is it Garfield? Is that the guy who
Andrew
played?
Garfield.
I haven't seen any of
Spider-Man.
I haven't seen any of
Garfield.
those ones.
The animated lasagna loving cat. That's Spider-Man.
Yeah. I really love this. It was visually fantastic. I think this is when I saw like the like, here's a quick look at the movie at the end of what movie was it that we saw?
Venom.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, at the end of that, I was like, man, I'm kind of worried about this. I don't know if they just picked the wrong one for that or what, but I was like, I don't know if I like this. And the little clips that I've seen in trailers and stuff, I was a little bit like, man, I don't know if I love that animation. But going through and sitting through the whole movie, I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic, really cool to see. I loved all the little comic book throw-ins with like inner monologues and stuff like that. I really had fun with that. I have to say, one of the best things about this movie, in my opinion, is the soundtrack was phenomenal. It kind of reminded me of like how perfectly fitting the Black Panther soundtrack was, the one that Kendrick Lamar kind of oversaw. This one was cool. It wasn't like a one artist doing the soundtrack with a bunch of features. It was like Jaden Smith, Post Malone. It's
on Apple Music right now. I've been carrying through.
I listened to it on the way home last night. It's a really, really great soundtrack as far as like non-original score stuff goes. So yeah, the soundtrack was great, visually amazing. I really liked all of the different spider people that we got to meet. I thought the characters were cool. One thing that I don't know if people are going to share this thought, but this is probably one of my favorite portrayals of like the Kingpin villain. I really enjoyed that, and I think it had to do with the visual. I think it benefited greatly from the cartoonness.
Yeah, I think this is our first area of disagreement.
Yeah,
I did not like this version of the Kingpin.
I loved the visual of like this big rectangle, like imposing, like evil guy. I
questioned the logistics of it, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that.
The biology is a little off for me.
Doors change shape often, but we don't have to worry about that part. But no, I really loved. I felt like the fact that it was kind of an animated cartoon thing really enhanced like the feeling of Kingpin, and I don't know why, but I was like thinking about it the whole time. I was like, man, I really like this Fisk. I thought he was really cool. And then the one like thing I think I'm gonna complain about, and I feel like I'm probably gonna get heat for this because I know how much you guys love John Mulaney, is I did not like the like cartoon Spider-Ham thing.
Oh, the heart of the movie.
I didn't. The humor.
What didn't you like about him?
The humor for all of his stuff it just felt really forced. I don't think I ever laughed at a joke that was supposed to be funny with him. Like the Spider-Ham thing just did not land for me. Though I will say that probably the funniest line in the movie for me did involve him, and it's when he does like the cheesy like "that's all, folks," and the other Spider-Man goes, "Is that legal? Can he say that?"
Yeah.
I laughed for like 15 minutes at that, but that wasn't really his joke, so I'm not giving him credit for it. But yeah, I don't know. That's probably like my one and only complaint is like the humor for the Spider-Ham thing. Every time he was kind of like, "Oh hey, I'm here," it just felt forced to me, and it didn't land. But it's not enough to like hurt the overall grade of the movie because it was used so sparingly, and I'm great that they didn't try to like shove it down my throat. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't aggressive, but I don't know. It didn't do it for me. And I like Mulaney. I'm not saying I don't like Mulaney. John, listen to me. I do not say that I don't like John Mulaney. Please don't hurt me. But I did not like that character. I don't want to give anything away, but towards the end of the movie, I think the whole like leap of faith transition where the new Spider-Man kind of comes into his own, and we see that kind of little montage of him like learning, you know, kind of fully expressing his new abilities. I thought was one of the coolest like expressions of that transition in a movie I've seen in a very long time. I think it was just expertly done. I thought it was cool, though things can happen quick in that kind of transition. It was one of the times where I was like, you know, I don't care that he's kind of got it now. Like, I really enjoy this. The music was perfect. You know, him kind of going around the city and being like, this is who I am, his outfit, like everything about that entire like leap of faith transition point was perfect for me.
So we didn't really cover this, but yeah, part of the plot is that dimensions are colliding, and all of these different spider people, we kind of mentioned that, kind of come in. And so yes, there's Spider-Him, there's the Spider Noir character voiced by Nicolas Cage, there's a Spider Animate character, there's all kinds of these characters coming in. And I would say that, you know, for me, I definitely really enjoyed this film. I thought that it was just a delight the entire way through. I actually really enjoyed the way that they wove those characters in the story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Even when those characters would come on and do their things, notably Gwen Stacy and the Peter Parker. I think he's Peter B. Parker.
Peter B. Parker.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's it.
Wonderful characters with lots of pathos and their own backstories that are comedically conveyed. But the story always comes back to Miles Morales. And one of the things I really appreciate about the Miles Morales character is, you know, seeing a character who he's, I believe he's Black Puerto Rican. So seeing a character that I share roots with, I kind of had the realization during this film that I don't think I've seen any other Puerto Rican characters in any sort of big blockbuster film in 2018. And so I had a little bit of a moment of, it was very cool to see, you know, somebody on screen that I can relate with in a very different way than I normally do. And so that was very great. And I have to say, you know, I want to turn it over to Will Ashton. I would be hard-pressed to find somebody who can tell me convincingly that this is not the best animated film of 2018. And I think that you can make an argument that it's up there with Black Panther as the best superhero film, but I would question whether or not this is, to me, feels... we were talking about, you know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs being kind of a moment where it's like, ooh, this kind of changes things, right? For me, this film sort of changes comic book and animation films and what you can use with those two mediums, what you can produce with those two mediums put together. And it's exciting to see this movie because you see a lot of possibilities for future films, but also taking the idea of what a comic book is and why people love them and making films out of them that are essential and different in ways that you can't really do with live action films, even though those are good in their own right. So, Will Ashton, what about you? I mean, we're praising this film quite a lot. So, where are you at with this new Spider-Man film?
Yeah. Well, like Matt, I grew up, I think, a big fan of the character of Spider-Man. I didn't read nearly as many comics as Matt has, but yeah, there's just something about Spider-Man that kind of idealizes the nature of the fun of being a superhero. I think the same with Superman. There is something like just very whimsical and magical about the character of Spider-Man's like love of being a superhero, like just the fact that he has like so much fun and joy, and but at the same time this very intense need to be the superhero despite the odds that are presented against him. I can see why people might be a little tired of all the Spider-Man movies we've gotten in the last 2 decades, but I can only think of one Spider-Man movie where I was just like, I don't like this at all. Like even the weaker installments of the series, I'm like, I just have so much fun with this character. I just love him so much. At the same time, though, I don't know, even with the buzz coming into this film, I wasn't really sure if I was going to be like in love with this movie as much as other people. Maybe just because something about when movies get like very, very hyped, I get really nervous. I guess just because like I don't know if it can possibly live up to those stakes, and if you're like the one person who doesn't like the movie, it's kind of terrifying. But I will say, I mean, even as I get older, I don't know if you feel this way, John, like going to movies doesn't often have like the same magic. Like I'm still very much a fan of films, but I haven't had that like same whimsical factor as often as I get older. Like there's something that's kind of, the more you go to the movies, the more you kind of you're aware of your surroundings, I guess. I don't know if you feel this way or not. Like you're aware that you're sitting in a theater watching a projection on a screen, and you're just like, okay, this is a movie. Even if I really like it, I can feel that way. And it's very rare for me to feel like, oh, like I'm in a movie, like I'm in there as much these days. But I will say, like, at least for 90 minutes of this movie, like I was completely, the theater was gone. Like I was in the movie. I was in it, and it made me like honestly feel like a kid again. Like it made me like, oh yeah, this is like what it was like to be a big fan of Spider-Man. And I really liked Homecoming as well, but like this is like, okay, this is what I like. And the only other time I think I had that feeling this year was, weirdly enough or fittingly enough, Incredibles 2, where I was like, oh yeah, this is like why I loved going to movies as a kid, like to see these big expressive action movies. And I think that's a credit to the filmmakers who are able to use the animation or use the medium animation in a way that's fun. You know, it's clear the animators are having a blast, even though I can imagine this is a very difficult film to animate just based on the way it's presented and looked. But it's clear that they have a lot of fun. It's very lighthearted, very bouncy, but there is that grounded morality to it that keeps it emotionally, you know, resonant. And I think that's quite a balance to not make jarring or anything like that. And I just think it's honestly pretty incredible. Like I don't know if I am even like as high as some people are about the film, but I can totally see why this movie is going to be one of the definitive Spider-Man movies of our time.
I think it very much will be. I think it's one of the best superhero films in the last decade. And part of the reason for that is because we see a lot of superhero films that don't do much to really tap into that emotion that you're talking about, the making you feel like a kid again. Beyond, you know, there are moments that we can point to throughout the Marvel films that have gotten that here and there. Mm-hmm. I think the airport scene in Captain America: Civil War is such a pure moment of heroic joy for those watching. It's so cathartic.
He might get mad at me, but the only other time I could think of that besides Incredibles 2 I felt this way was Captain Underpants.
I will not get mad at you ever for loving Captain Underpants. That is a genuine, that is innocence and full display.
But I think there's proof there, like between that Incredibles 2 and maybe Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that there's just something about animation and superheroes that just fits so well. Obviously, because it is an animated film or medium to begin with, but I just think, even like compared to like the live action superhero movies that I love, this like there's something about animation that just makes it click. I don't know. I wish I could say it more prophetically, but yeah.
This was Spider-Man fully realized, like I thought.
Well, you know, part of that I think is because, so you do still have Peter Parker in this film. One of my favorite elements of Spider-Verse is that we get the adult Peter Parker, the one who's in his 30s, who's a bit washed up. His Mary Jane, who I think is voiced by Zoe Kravitz in this. Yeah. So we see, you know, there's one of the lines in this film really crystallized it for me, where he's like, I saved the world, maybe a little too much. And it was one of those things where we were, it made me realize we're exploring the adult Spider-Man for the first time in cinematic history. It feels like we always seem to get the high school Spider-Man. We got to go back to when he was in high school with Andrew Garfield. Let's do it again with Tom Holland.
Let's do it one more time.
That's right. And I appreciated so much that Spider-Verse gave us, you know, a brief version of the adult Spider-Man. Clearly there's an appetite for that because that character is so fresh. This reminded me of the Spider-Man from the 80s and 90s from those comics. Because that was the Spider-Man that was in those stories, and it's taken a long time for the films to give it a chance on that sort of thing. And in fact, it made me wonder too, if only we could have had like the Miles Morales be the live action high school Spider-Man in the more recent films. But obviously they were always going to go with the new Peter Parker for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so far that's turned out pretty well. We don't have to talk about it, but I did manage to catch the Spider-Man Far From Home, you know, reactions to a trailer that none of us are able to see yet, and some of how that story is developing with Jake Gyllenhaal plays the villain in that film, Mysterio. And it just sort of... Yeah, I do love Jake Gyllenhaal, so it excites me that he is going to have a pretty strong presence in that film. He has a lot to live up to with Michael Keaton, who was a wonderful villain as the Vulture in Homecoming. But all of that to say, it is kind of fascinating to me, like you said, Will, there are so many Spider-Man films getting thrown at us, and yet at the end of this one, at that post-credit scene, which we will dare not give away because it is absolutely one of the best post-credit scenes we've gotten ever,
for sure.
I think, in my opinion. I found myself craving more Spider-Man films, and they did it. That's what a film studio wants. Obviously, the creators behind this wanted us to enjoy this, and I think I have not yet found anybody who really hates this film. Obviously, there's some contrarians out there who just aren't into it, but yeah, it's definitely it feels like universal acclaim is in the air for this animated film, and it's quite a surprise, and I'm super happy to see it. But let's go into our final thoughts and sum this thing up. Matt Serafini, you've listened to us kind of rave quite a bit. Did you have anything else to add to kind of sum up your thoughts on this, maybe in terms of the legacy of this film and how you see it playing with wide audiences? It's hitting its wide release this coming weekend as we speak. People are buying their tickets. We don't know if it's going to be a huge success, but maybe it will be.
Yeah, I'll just say like this movie takes the context of Spider-Man and our greater culture, all the comics, all the memes, all the video games, TV shows, the previous 6 movies, and all the fans, and they contextualize it all by wrestling that legacy and show what it really truly means to be Spider-Man, and like anyone can wear that mask, and it's just such a good message of a movie in so many ways. It's really, like I said, it's really something special, and I hope everybody sees it. I hope it wins the Oscar. I love this movie if I haven't made it clear enough. And the credit sequence, without spoiling it, is a great look into my inner psyche.
I can see it being your the background of one of your social media profiles for quite a while.
Yep, exactly. There's so much more to say, but just go see it. That's my final thing, I think. Go see it.
What was your final grade?
I'm going to give it an A.
Not even an A+, Matt?
Well, I know A pluses are rare to hand out. You know, yeah, for me it's an A+.
Oh,
that's
talked him. You upsold him on the A+. Well, should work at the movie theater.
I guess so. I do work at the movie theater.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you want the large popcorn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maveryke Hines, what about your final grade?
I have to say, like I said before, I don't have the full sample size of all the Spider-Man movies, but this one, I feel like, in time might creep its way to my favorite Spider-Man movie list. I'm really liking it. It's an A for me as well. Not an A+. Sorry, Will. No sell here.
I love that line from the trailer where, and I think it's in the movie too, where the Jake Johnson Spider B Man or Peter B Parker, whatever it is, where he
Spider
says,
B Man.
I like it. Spider B Man.
Lord and Miller, call me up.
What does the B stand for?
Benjamin.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
There you go, man.
I forget what the other one was. I think it was J or something like that. But for the Chris Pine Spider-Man. But yeah, so I love that line from the trailer where he says, "What makes you different makes you Spider-Man," and they did find a way to make Miles Morales his own Spider-Man, and they made the story about how there are so many Spider-Man movies. It's very meta, and that
It's
obviously
so
pleases
meta.
us. Because that's funny, and that kind of, we feel like we're in the hands of people who understand the material, and we're able to like sit back and relax and take it seriously when we need to take it seriously, but also laugh at it or laugh with it, we should say, when it's trying to be funny, and it balances those tones almost pitch perfectly. So, and I do want to say too that I forgot to mention Catherine Hahn voices one of my favorite villains in this. Now I'm not going to give it away because I think for some people it might constitute as a spoiler. But yeah, the voice cast in this we should give a lot of props to. Some really great characters in here. Even some of the plot twists that you see coming in here in terms of like, oh, that character is going to be that character. You can see it coming if you're like Matt Serafini and you read a lot of the comics.
Actually, that caught me off guard.
Oh,
I'll admit
interesting.
it. Yeah, it was a good reveal.
All right. Well, we won't get into it, obviously, but so there you go. They got one past Matt Serafini, Spider-Man expert. So, so I have to give this one an A as well. I just think that it's a quintessential Spider-Man movie, and it's a quintessential superhero film. And Will Ashton, close us out. Tell us all about your B-.
I don't know if I have anything else to add that I haven't said already, but there are so many ways this movie could have been like exhausting or tiring just based on the meta humor, the kind of whiz bang buck animation style, the very like fast paced tone. But I think it's really a credit to the filmmakers that this movie is as consistently engaging as it is, while not feeling like completely hearted. It's pretty miraculous considering that the film has like so many multi-universes and all that. That it is fairly simple at its heart, in a way that I guess some could see the message as being cheesy, and I think that's kind of a tribute to Spider-Man. That even I think there is something that's always going to be kind of cheesy about Spider-Man, but I think the movie is actually able to avoid like some of the pratfalls that have been found in other Spider-Man movies, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I think the only criticism I have is that I was starting to get a little checked out by the end. And it's not to say that I was like bored. I just was kind of like, okay, I think this is like kind of like I'm starting to realize I'm back in the movie theater again. His name is Shymeik Moore, right? The guy who plays Miles Morales from Dope. Yeah, he gives, I think, honestly, one of the best voice acting performances I've seen in a long time. He was really, truly tremendous, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. So for me, I'm going to give it an A-.
All right. Well, that is an A average for all four of us. Go check it out, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There's going to be a lot of films coming at you in December, a lot of big blockbusters, including this weekend, but next weekend as well. So I have a feeling Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is going to be our favorite compared to all of those other films. Don't want to make any reckless predictions, but I think that's probably going to be the case. Definitely a good one to take children to, since it is animated. But I also do think that adults and superhero fans are going to get a kick out of this, and it's in theaters now.